Hi everyone, and welcome to Venu's weekly cricket catch up. I've got Fizan with me. How are you doing, Fizan?
I'm very good. Lots of cricket going on, so excited to discuss not just that, but other topics as well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, as you're saying, a lot of cricket this week, and especially Test cricket, which is my favourite form of cricket. So yeah. So let's start with that then. So there are 3 Test matches going on at the moment, 3 Boxing Day Test matches. All 3 of them are looking quite interesting at the moment. So the first one that started was New Zealand versus Pakistan. Then it was Australia-India at the Melbourne Cricket Ground. And then you have the South Africa-Sri Lanka at Centurion. So let's start off with New Zealand-Pakistan. If you want to have a more detailed review of the day, do look at Fizan's QualityShot channel, and we have done videos going over that test match. So let's go through it briefly. We're not going to go through it in detail, because if you want to watch, I'm sure Fizan will add a link to the video and you can have a look. So during the first innings, I believe, who won the toss? It was Pakistan. They elected to
Pakistan won the toss,
field first, and New Zealand put on a decent total of 431. And the highlight innings was the one and only their captain, their maestro, Kane Williamson, who hit a splendid 129 of 297 balls, with 12 fours and 1 6, strike of just over 40. So really excellent innings from Williamson, aptly supported by Taylor with a solid 70, and Henry Nicholls with a 56, and a bit of good tail end batting with Watling, hit a 73 to get New Zealand to respectable 4-3-1 after over a day and a half's play. And Pakistan are currently replied, and 30-1 after 20 overs. So I think New Zealand are in driving seat of this test match. Wouldn't you agree, Fizan?
Yeah, 100% firm unit. As a Pakistan fan, obviously hoping that Pakistan can claw it back, but we're going to have to bat very long, bat through the day 3, and yeah, just hope that we can claw back some momentum, because at the moment it's pretty much all New Zealand, to be honest.
It is, and you are lacking, your star player Babar, who, would his ideal situation now, trying to bat a whole day. So you're missing him, but hopefully, I'm sure one of Abid Ali, Azhar Ali, Fawad Alam, I'm sure they could hit 100. You never know, Fizan. Have your hopes up.
Yep, never know. Who knows?
Never know, Pakistan. Out of all the teams, you never know. But yeah, as you're saying, New Zealand are in the driving seat of this test match. So as I've said earlier, if you want to have a more detailed review of this match, do look at the link Fizan will put in this video, and also look at his channel. And there's more in-depth analysis, and same with the other test matches as well. Now, moving on to the second test match, let's go into Australia-India, which is turning out to be a really interesting test match. I think it's going to be a close one. So with this one, I believe at the iconic Melbourne Cricket Ground, the Melbourne Boxing Day Test match. So with this, Australia won the toss, elected to bat, and they got to they were balled out for 195. I think the standout innings there was probably Labuschagne, who hit 48. But I think Australia would have been disappointed that they didn't really make a bigger score of that, considering they won the toss. And we saw some excellent Indian bowling, in particular from Bumrah, who got the key wickets of Burns, Travis Head, and also we've got to talk about Ashwin, who got the key wicket of Steve Smith. So at the moment, Ashwin seems to be making a meal of Steve Smith, isn't he, at the moment? Or Steve Smith is making a meal of Ashwin at the moment. What do you think, Fizan?
Yeah, 100%. Steve Smith is struggling with Ashwin, not sure why. Normally he plays spin quite well, but I think Ashwin's applying himself very well on these Australian wickets so far. So yeah, bowling very well, and Steve Smith just, yeah, I don't know. I think the whole Australian batting up just doesn't look quite in nick, and it might be a bit worrying. So they'll be hoping to really stamp their authority in the first session tomorrow of day 3 and try and restrict India. Because at the moment, kind of similar to New Zealand, I think that India are pretty much in the driving seat at the moment, and the momentum's with them. So Australia will need to have a big day tomorrow.
Yeah, they do need a big day. And to add to that, the reason why they need a big day tomorrow and the reason why India are in the driving seat is mainly down to their captain, the standing captain, Ajinkya Rahane, who hits 104 not out overnight with Ravindra Jadeja, who's on 40 not out. So they'll be looking tomorrow to extend their lead, which is already at a healthy 82 runs. So they're probably looking at 150 plus. And as you say, they're in the driving seat. And I think Rahane played an excellent knock. And I think he's really made amends for running out Kohli last week. Wouldn't you say so, Fazan?
Yeah, 100%. Big knock from a standing captain. And yeah, obviously that was a terrible run out. But it's all is forgotten after that 100, I'm sure.
And I'm sure we've forgotten if India win this test match. They're in a really good position here. But as we alluded to in the review video, which Fazan will put the link up, Australia are looking to get quick wickets tomorrow. So I think for you cricket fans out there, I'll suggest to tune in for the first half hour of this test match. It could be the turning point, and it will tell us who's going to win, whether it'll be India or Australia. But at the moment, India are favourites at the moment to win this test match. Now, we are now lucky. We don't have 2 test matches going on at the moment. We've got 3 test matches going on. And this one is kind of a run fest, isn't it, Fazan? So Sri Lanka currently touring South Africa, and they have last 4 test matches against South Africa, they've actually won, and they're hoping to repeat their heroic series victory last time they were in South Africa, and with that brilliant knock from Kusa Pereira, one of the greatest knocks of all time. So looking to repeat that series for this one. Now, this test match, as I said, is a bit of a run fest. So who won the toss? Sri Lanka won the toss and elected to bat first, which I thought was a brave move. And they hit 396 runs with 96 overs at a run rate of 4.1, which is pretty good going. And I think the standout performances there was Dinesh Chandimal and Dhananjaya De Silva, who had a really decent partnership. And it reminded me of Sri Lanka of old with Sangakkara and Jayawardene at times. And what was really nice to see was most of the Sri Lanka batsmen got a score, especially in that middle order. They got 49. Shanaka batted really well with tail, 66, to get Sri Lanka towards the 400 mark. But shame that Dhananjaya De Silva got injured. And so Sri Lanka was total 396, really good total. Their highest total in South Africa. What do you think about that, Fazan?
Yeah, really impressive showing from Sri Lanka. Dhananjaya De Silva, just a bit disappointing, as you said, that he got injured and wasn't able to come back after retiring hurt on 70 odd to come back and really push them beyond the 400. But 396 is still a very good total. Although South Africa, I think obviously are making it seem like this is a pretty good batting track, but I think it's more to do with the application of batsmen, also a slight inexperience in both bowling attacks, and also Sri Lanka not having bowling options because of Dhananjaya being injured, and also Rajitha getting injured after 2 overs. So I think, look, Sri Lanka are, for me, still in a good position, but I think it's now coming more into balance after kind of a seesaw test match so far, with day 1 definitely going to Sri Lanka, day 2 to South Africa. And I think day 3, similar to be honest, the other 2 test matches, I think day 3 is always pivotal, and I think it'll be pivotal here again.
Yeah, definitely. I think South Africa look in their good position, considering they're only 80 odds runs behind Sri Lanka, and they've got 2 set batsmen in Du Plessis and Bavuma, who batted really well. They're nearly getting a 100-run partnership, and Sri Lanka will be looking to get one of those 2 out and expose their inexperienced tail. And as you said, Fazan, just like with the other 2 test matches, the first hour of tomorrow will be pivotal in determining who wins this test match. But I would say, as you're right, day 1 was Sri Lanka's, day 2 probably South Africa's, and we'll see with day 3. And yes, so so that's all the test matches wrapped up. Now, there's a few talking points that I'd like to bring up from the test matches. Now, I think it'd be quite nice to continue talking about the Sri Lanka-South Africa test match. Now, as we've just talked about, unfortunately, 2 Sri Lankan players have gone out injured. So Danijaya De Silva injured one. I think he tore a thigh muscle, and you've got one of the bowlers, or could even call him all-rounder, considering his first innings efforts. It was Kasan Rajifa, only bowled 2 overs and he had to go off. So there are 2. So Sri Lanka at the moment are 2 bowlers down and 1 batsman down in terms as Danijaya De Silva is an all-rounder. Now, I know we discussed this briefly in a previous video, but I think we need to discuss this again in maybe more detail. Do you think there needs to be substitutions in cricket? I know there's concussion substitutions, which is excellent. I think that's a great right move in the right direction. However, unfortunately, Sri Lanka have got a depleted bowling attack, and they're effectively playing with 9 players, which is unfortunate. So bowling-wise, they're two bowlers down. And batting-wise, when they come to the second innings, I'm not sure if Kasan Rajifa can bat. They'll be 9. They'll have 9 batsmen. So South Africa have the advantage there. Do you think substitutions need to be brought on into cricket? And if so, Fizan, what kind of rules need to be put in place? What kind of guidelines need to be put in place to ensure it's fair for teams and to ensure that teams don't push it and make it an advantage in terms of their play?
Yeah, it's a really interesting talking point because obviously you mentioned it in the South Africa, Sri Lanka kind of day 2 review, and I think it's something that, as you said, we should maybe discuss a little bit upon. In my opinion, it's a weird one because you don't normally get too many scenarios where you would need it, but there are definitely instances where it does happen and where I think it does definitely shift the momentum of a game. And obviously, it's not something which is tactical or bad application from players, etc. It's just to do with luck, really. And anyone can get injured at any point. And as you said, concussion substitutes have now been introduced, which is good. It's whether they want to introduce it. So I think it would be tough to introduce it, say, in T20 cricket or ODI cricket, because I think it's a shorter format. And I don't think it has as much bearing, if that makes sense. Whereas That's in true. Test cricket, because it's 2 innings and 5 days, I think obviously you feel it a lot more. So I think in Test cricket, personally, I would like to see it piloted in Test cricket first. And in terms of how it would work, I think off the top of my head and how I think it should work is obviously like for like replacements. You'd probably have a bowler, one bowler, 1 batsman, 1 all-rounder, kind of on standby, I guess is what you'd have. Something similar to that, or maybe 2 all-rounders, 1 who's bowling around and 1 who's batting around, or something along those lines, who you could then sub in. And yeah, then you kind of go from there. And obviously, I think something you mentioned previously before this video actually was that you need to have a neutral medical kind of personnel there to then assess whether it's a legitimate injury, because the issue is that obviously then people will inevitably try and use their advantage that, they might try and feign injury or say, especially if, for example, you've got 1 innings left and that innings is going to be your team bowling, then at the end of the batting display, you could say, I've just got injured, I need to go off one of the batsmen, and then you bring on someone who can maybe bowl a little bit. But I think, to be honest with you, now thinking about it, having a like for like takes that out of the equation. But there's also the issue of having more fresh players coming in, because obviously a fresh player will potentially, especially for bowlers, be a positive and potentially an advantage. So I think having a neutral medical personnel is a very important factor in there to make sure that people are playing by the rules, because everyone always tries to find an edge. I'm not trying to say that people are going to try and cheat, although that might happen, but I think it's just more people trying to find edges and loopholes wherever they can. And I think if you put those rules in place, though, for me personally, I think I'm trying to think whether anything else would need to be put in place. And I think, to be honest, that's pretty much all you need. I don't think it's too complicated, if I'm being honest with you. I think the only thing that might be complicated is if you've got an all-rounder.
Yeah.
For example, they get injured while bowling and then they can only bat. Then I guess the impetus is then maybe on the team to decide whether they want to sub him in or out. And again, then he gets assessed by the medical professional. So, yeah, for me, that's how it would work. And I think it's pretty straightforward. And I think it's something that would definitely help the game. Because I think, for example, for Sri Lanka, South Africa at the moment, Sri Lanka were in the driving seat, but after those 2 injuries, I think they're still, obviously, as we said, the match is in balance, but it's still very difficult now, especially with those injuries. And as the days go on, the bowlers who are having to bowl, when you've only got 4 bowlers, the workload on them is a lot heavier, and it will affect them, when they have to bowl in that second innings.
Yeah, I think it's something that has to be discussed going forward. And I think because the cricketers' workload, international cricketers' workload has increased over the last decade or so in terms of, especially with the amount of cricket they're playing, the amount of tours they go on, the amount of franchise cricket they play, I think it has to be discussed going forward. And I think having a like-for-like replacement, I think that's the way forward. But it is difficult because Fizan, you made a really good point thinking, one of your bowlers got injured. I mean, you brought a like-for-like replacement in and he's a lot more fresh. It's I know it's a tactic in Test match cricket to wear down opposition bowlers. And if one bowler gets injured, then he could bring a fresher bowler in and can be more of an advantage for the bowling side. So there's something that needs to be discussed going forward, but I'm sure, hopefully, it's something that can be discussed because it's, for the neutral, it's kind of soured this Test match because you've got 11 players facing 9, and that's not really what you want in sport, really. So that's that. So substitute.
Just quickly, sorry, before we wrap up on that, actually, a good point to make as well is that it can also work for batsmen because, for example, if you're in a position where you want to score runs quickly and you have someone who's a substitute batsman who is renowned for scoring quicker than someone who's already, in the middle order that you've got in, then you can have people feigning injury as a batsman, say, then you can substitute him in and then you get a vital run. So I think it can work, for a bowler or batsman. And I think that's why, as you rightly said, it needs to be looked at carefully and, people are actually assessed correctly to see whether they're injured or not. So, and yeah, as you said, 11 versus 9, because fielding wise, it doesn't make a difference because you have substitute fielders, so you can bring those in, but it's just obviously in the bowling and batting aspects now, unfortunately, it's going to be a lot more difficult now, obviously, without 2 players.
But to add to that, Fizan, it's very rarely that 2 players get injured in a Test match. So, yeah, I think that's probably why we're discussing this right now. But I think it's something that needs to be discussed going forward. So that's that. So that's a talking point from the Sri Lanka South Africa series. Another interesting thing to talk about from the Sri Lanka South Africa series is Quincy de Kock, who is South Africa's captain, or shall we say South Africa's standing captain, because he has publicly said that he is not be South Africa's long-term Test captain, but is willing to basically be in charge of the team until they find a suitable candidate or suitable successor. He does lead. I must add, de Kock does lead the team in more white ball formats, and he also keeps wicket. He's one of the most one of the team's senior batsmen. But I think de Kock has publicly came out and said that he doesn't want to be the long-term Test captain. Personally, I mentioned this to you, Fizan, earlier on this week. I think when this came out, I don't think he should really publicly come out with that because it sends a wrong message to his teammates. And what do you think about Quincy de Kock coming out saying that he doesn't want to be South Africa's Test captain long term?
Yeah, I think it's a weird one. I think obviously he's just trying to be honest about it, but I do agree maybe it should have been kept behind closed doors, that he doesn't want to do it long term. But maybe he's spoken to Cricket South Africa and they've said, look, it's fine, say whatever you want. And yeah, that's fine. I think what it seems like is that he's doing them a favour, really. And they're not really sure who to go with. And as an interim captain, they've said, okay, what do you mind doing it? Because you're already capturing the other two. And obviously there's some players that do cross over the formats and you have experience captaining in the other two formats. And he said, yeah, okay, I'll do it as a favour, but I don't want to be doing this long term. One of the candidates I think that they were discussing and have been is Aidan Markram, but he's relatively young. He's around our age or a bit younger, and
27.
27. Yeah, so our age. Yeah. And then he was struggling for runs, but obviously he's got runs in his Test match so far, so that's a big plus. And they're looking at him potentially as long-term candidate, and I think a couple of others. But yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously, as someone, a cricket fan, you don't want someone to come out and say, I don't want to be captain of a team. But maybe because he is captain in two other formats and is wicket-keeping, he probably just thinks, look, this is going to be too much for me to do it long-term. So, it's up to him. It's a personal preference, I guess. But yeah, I think from a team perspective, I think if a Pakistan captain came out and said, I don't want to do this long-term in Test cricket, I would have said, okay, I would rather you just said that behind closed doors. But sometimes it's nice to have that openness because then there's less kind of whispering and rumors going around as well. So sometimes it can work out in two ways, really. But yeah, I just think it's maybe to do workload for him, really.
Okay, so that's well said, Fazan. Now, let's talk about the India-Australia Test series. So the Cricket Australia are actually preparing a fresh pitch at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, and this is because the third Test in Sydney, which is planned to begin on 7th of January. So that's the iconic New Year's Test match at Sydney. There's some concern hosting that at Sydney due to the number of coronavirus cases in Sydney, and also they have put some restriction on travel into the Sydney area. So at the moment, they're actually preparing a pitch next to the pitch they're playing on at the moment. So it's currently on standby, and the ground staff at Melbourne Cricket Ground are readying the strip immediately, and it's a bit of 50-50 situation there. And we'll see we'll see what happens as the New South Wales and Queensland governments have to negotiate to see what happens. But it's good to hear that there is a backup plan just in case. But it'll be nice to see a Test match at the iconic Sydney Cricket Ground. Wouldn't you agree, Fazan?
Yeah, 100%. Because look, the MCG, every cricket ground plays slightly differently, and it's a different challenge and also, I think, environment to play in Sydney compared to the MCG. So, look, I don't think it really gives anyone a particular advantage if it stays in the MCG, because then both teams have had 5 days or 4 days playing on one of the strips there. So if they were to do it there, but it's nice to see that they've got a precaution in place. And obviously it makes sense that if they're struggling to potentially logistically get across to Sydney because of COVID, then they put something in place to say, well, it makes sense for us to stay in the bubble here in the MCG for the next Test match. So yeah, obviously it's not ideal, but I think at the end of the day, it's not a bad idea. And I think obviously it would be nice if they maybe prepared it in a slightly different way to this Test match, so you see something a little bit different. But I don't know. I think either way, they're doing a good job just putting precautions in place to make sure that we're going to get a Test match no matter what. And I think that's the most important thing, is that you get cricket seen. But I think for Sydney, because obviously we've seen crowds in Australia as well, to see, I think for Sydney, it's obviously a bit disappointing because fans there might have wanted to obviously go and have a crowd there. But with COVID, obviously that takes priority. So yeah, as long as everyone's safe and they do what's right by the players, and I think that's the most important thing, to be fair.
Yeah. So Yeah, so that's the India-Australia Test series. Now, let's quickly touch upon England's imminent tour to Sri Lanka. That's in the new year. So that's still scheduled to proceed as planned in the new year in January. And that's according to ECB, so the England and Wales Cricket Board. And that's in spite of the UK government requiring any persons who've been to South Africa, which the majority of the England squad have, because they were there in December. And unfortunately, the ODI tour had to be called off. And the UK government requiring any person to quarantine immediately due to the discovery of new mutation of COVID-19 virus. But I think their players have been given an exemption and it's still planned to go ahead, which is good news for Zon, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I think, so I know in boxing, and I'm assuming the same is true for cricket, that elite sportsmen have exemptions for quarantining, etc. So obviously they've got more kind of, well, they're supposed to have more in-depth testing and more regular testing, etc. And kind of more, what's the word, expert precautions put in place for COVID. So in a way, it makes sense. And yeah, it's good to see. I think for Sri Lanka, I guess you can talk upon this more, but it'd be good to see. Obviously, they're touring South Africa at the moment, but it'd be nice to see a team come to Sri Lanka to tour, especially a team in the ilk of England, which, you know, they're up there at the moment in the top 5 test teams in the world. You'd say, and obviously they're a strong team coming in, but it'll be nice to see one, how England do in subcontinent conditions, and it'll be 100% a big challenge for England, and two, just good to see Sri Lanka getting some more cricket, because obviously this is the first kind of cricket they've had against South Africa in that series since March. So good to see that they're getting some more cricket scheduled and kind of back to back as well, which would be good.
Yeah, so yeah, that's as a Sri Lankan fan and also an England fan, it'd be good to see that series go ahead. So let's talk about the Big Bash League, which is happening in Australia at the moment. So at the moment, I believe the Sydney Sixers are top of the table. So they've played 4 matches and won 3 and lost 1, so then 12 points. And then Sydney Thunder are just second joint on 11 points with the Hobart Hurricanes. Have you been watching much of the Big Bash League, on?
To be honest with you, I haven't watched a huge amount just because at the moment there's so much cricket going on with the test matches. So yeah, just haven't really got around to it. I've watched a few highlights, etc. But yeah, I haven't got around to watching it. As I said to you before, I'm a little bit, not miffed, but a little bit disappointed that it's going on at the same time as the Australia test series against India, because obviously you're not going to see the best of the best in terms of Australian talent on the show. Obviously Maxwell's in it, which is nice, but you're not going to see obviously Steve Smith, Mitchell Stark, Pat Cummins, Hazelwood, whoever else, David Warner, Aaron Finch is in it, sorry. But David Warner's injured at the moment, but even then he wouldn't be in it. So yeah, a little bit disappointing from that point of view, but from what I've seen in the highlights, etc., it looks pretty exciting. Still a little bit confused about the rules in terms of, I don't know what it really brings to the competition, if I'm being honest with you, but so far so good, and good to see crowds as well in Australia.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's making me jealous, thinking I wish I was in Australia right now, or even New Zealand, and watching these matches. But I'm sure we will have opportunity to see cricket matches in England come April, May, June. Fingers crossed, but we'll see. Now, I found a few points to talk about, some interesting points to talk about. Firstly, you may be glad to hear, Fazan, the BCCI, so the Indian Cricket Board, have approved a 10-team IPL, so an increase of 2 teams from 2022. And so this, so for the 2021 edition, they're going to decide to stick with 8 teams. However, in 2022, they're going to decide to stick with 10 teams. What do you think about that?
Well, I guess I said to you about, what was it, the LPL, because they only had 6 teams, I think it was.
Yeah.
That obviously when these franchises start, they need to obviously establish themselves, and obviously the IPL has done that now, and they're trying to grow. and make it, I guess, include more players and more overseas players and give them more opportunities, etc. So that's just what's happening. It's just growing, isn't it, as a franchise? And I'm sure these other franchises like the BBL, whatever, PSL, LPL, all of these will grow to a similar degree once they're established as well, or more established. So I think it's just a case of that. Obviously, me personally, I don't follow it. I don't really follow it, but in terms of the players that it attracts, obviously it attracts quite a few from around the world, and big names at that. So yeah, I think for the neutral who does watch it, it's good news.
It is, yes, and it'd be good to have more teams, more Indian players playing, and also some more international players playing as well. So my only issue is with this is that I'm not sure what the format would be, but if each team plays each other team twice, home and away, then that IPL window does increase in size. So there may be more strain from players. You know how big the IPL is, to not wanting to play for the countries, and other boards having to work around the IPL to make sure toes don't clash. So that's my only issue with it. But there are some benefits, that's for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the scheduling, and that's what I was saying about the Big Bash, that it's, obviously, I don't know what's going on at the same time as similarly with the IPL. I think even there was an example of, what was it, Andre Russell playing in the LPL, which is great to see for Sri Lanka. But obviously for West Indies, he didn't play the T20s against New Zealand. And then I think I mentioned this before, and the New Zealand chairman obviously said, the West Indies chairman said, well, look, we don't hold it against him because obviously, he needs to make a living. But the issue there is that obviously there's two issues here. The first issue is that some countries are not paying their players enough. And that could be to do with the economy, or they just don't have the funds for it, or they're just underpaying them when they shouldn't be, and maybe they do have the funds and they're underpaying them what they should be paid. And two, as you said, because obviously in these franchises they're being paid quite a fair bit of money, when they're thinking, why am I going to bother, playing for my country and kind of busting their gut when I can go and play franchise cricket and kind of be hailed as being the best thing since sliced bread, and I'll get like double the amount. So I think we have to take into account most of these guys have all got families or people that they want to look after as well. So I can understand it, but I do also agree with you that you don't want to get to a stage where you don't see some teams, you don't see the best players playing just because they're off playing franchise cricket, which is not the pinnacle of the sport. And I don't care what anyone says, but the IPL, PSL, all these franchises are great. Good to see, good to build up countries, and good to help the youngsters in the countries as well and develop the kind of the nations from a cricketing standpoint, because you have those international players coming in and honing their skills and also opening them up to different ideas, especially the coaches as well coming in. So it's good. It definitely helps in that sense to be exposed to loads of different cricketing minds and IQs. But the pinnacle is not these franchises. It's the World Cup. It's the Test matches. It's the Test Championship now, as we've got. It's even the World T20, but all these international matches and tournaments, Champions Trophy, the World Cup, all of these are the pinnacles of the sport that you need to be looking at, and that's what they should be aspiring to go to, and hoping and looking to help do a good job for their country so that they can potentially win a tournament. And yeah, I just think it's something that people need to balance, and it's going to get to a stage where people need to be very, very careful, and they will choose between them, and that's what's happening to a little bit of a degree. I think countries need to be very careful to make sure they don't lose players because of that, because you don't want to lose a player just because you're underpaying them when you could be paying them more.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. I think we need the cricket boards need to be careful when dealing with the rise of franchise cricket, because there are maybe 4, 5, 6 successful franchise leagues now and happening annually. So yeah, I think that's something they need to tread carefully with. So another talking point that came up in that meeting that the BCCI did was that the potential inclusion for cricket in the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. So the ICC are becoming more optimistic with inclusion of cricket in the 2028 Summer Olympics. And the ICC has sent a questionnaire to all member countries asking to quantify the potential financial benefits that could accrue from these respective governments if cricket was included. Now, I think I always thought, why wasn't cricket in the Olympics? And one, because I think the formatting will have to be, obviously you can't have a test match tournament in the Olympics, so it'll have to be a T20 or even something smaller, maybe 100 tournament. We'll see how the 100 goes ahead in England, how successful that is. But yeah, I always thought, cricket is, you've got, I think maybe 1 billion people playing cricket around the world. I don't know what the number is. So 1 in 6 of us, I think, are playing cricket. So it's a huge sport, and it's a shame that it's not in the Olympics. And I think cricket's such a great sport, and I think it needs that global recognition. And I think it'd be a good chance for all these countries, in these smaller countries, to play in a tournament and go ahead against these big teams in whatever format they decide to do it. But I think I really hope it does get included in the Olympics. However, it will add to the workload of these cricketers, because we just discussed about the IPL plan to increase it from 8-team tournament to 10-team tournament, and all these other franchises, and then Olympics as well. It'd be non-stop cricket for these players. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with that, Fizan.
Yeah, I just think in theory, it's a good idea. But the issue is, as you said, is about workload, but also whether teams are going to prioritize it and actually put strong teams forward, whether they'll put forward second, third string, even potentially youth teams forward, basically, to compete, because they just don't take it seriously. The other issue that I have is, I don't know if we're going to touch upon this, but this kind of ties into what the Australian chairman said about, there basically being 10 to 20 competitive nations around the world in cricket, rather than at the moment what we've got, maybe 7 or 8 like very competitive nations who you can say are on any given day can win against each other, basically. And yeah, I just think cricket has got a long way to go, because unlike other sports where it is globally recognized and you see it in being competed across 50 different nations, in cricket we're only limited to, really, if you think about like the Test Championship, you're eight teams or whatever it is. So it's just really not good enough, to be honest with you. And the only way that cricket's going to grow globally, and if they want to really push forward that Olympic idea, the only way you're going to do that and actually generate interest from it is by making sure you do the groundwork beforehand, and you make sure that you include teams like Ireland, Hong Kong, whoever it might be, USA even, Scotland, Oman, Netherlands, all these sides, right? And then also what will happen is Nepal, all these teams will, if you start playing T20s, ODIs, even test matches, and people are going to be saying, what, test matches? Yeah, because the only way that you're going to get these nations excited about it is by getting them to play against the bigger nations. I'm not saying throw them into a test match straight away with, Australia or Pakistan or India or England. I'm not saying that. I'm saying maybe start with T20s, get them playing those against everyone, that everyone has to play a certain number of games against whatever associate nations per year. Then you bump it up to ODIs once they get more comfortable. Then once they get more comfortable in that, then you bump it up to test cricket. And then you know what will happen? The whole world will be a lot better for it in terms of a cricketing nation, because you won't just have people cheering for one team. You'll have people cheering for 2, 3 teams. You'll have people discussing it, not just with people who are interested in 7 or 8 countries, but you'll be able to discuss cricket with people who are interested from 20, 30 countries, 10 to, even, as he said, 10 to 20 countries. And 20 countries is ideal, because you don't want to be having the same teams playing the same series constantly, and it does get boring. And I know I'm going to be really controversial here, but the Ashes I know it's seen as being regarded as like one of the pinnacles of Test cricket, but to me as a neutral who really doesn't support either team, I don't see, like, it's every 2 years, and I find it ends up getting a bit boring to me in the sense that I don't want to keep on seeing the same team playing the same team every time, basically. And they play each other all the time, Australia and England. Same with India. India play Australia and England all the time. Even with Pakistan and stuff and other teams, they play each other constantly. And you see the same matchups constantly. So it'd be nice to see other teams, other countries get introduced. I'm not saying get rid of the Ashes, get rid of these teams, but what I'm saying is that you need to have a format where, for example, India are not playing Australia in 4 tests, and then Sri Lanka are only playing South Africa in 2 tests, or Pakistan are only playing New Zealand in 2 tests. That doesn't make any sense to me. You either have to conform and say we're going to play 3 tests across the board series. If you want to do 5 tests, then you've got to say we're going to play 5 tests across the series, and then you've got to make sure that you're playing. Everyone's being able to play against the top teams equally, because even at the moment it's cliquey and there's only 7 teams. So imagine what's going to happen when it grows. They'll probably have a system in place where there's 3 tiers of Test Championship. So I just think if we're going to do it, we're going to do it properly rather than just doing it for the sake of it, so that certain countries can show off their own talents and players. Because I think we all the cricket boards need to be in it together to say we want to make cricket grow, and let's make sure that cricket doesn't die, because that's what will end up happening to some degree. You'll lose fans because all you'll have is Test cricket is already supposedly dying, although we've seen it because we're big cricket fans. But as a casual fan, are they going to watch Test cricket at the moment? Probably not. They're going to go after work and watch a T20 game. So if you want to get people interested, you've got to have more countries involved and actually help them out as well. And that's the only way to do it. Sorry, I've ranted on a little bit, but I'm really passionate about this, and I want cricket to grow globally, not just within 7-8 countries.
The issue is, though, I know, I think you made some really good points there. But the issue is, where are these boards going to find the time, especially when there's lots of franchise cricket going on?
Yeah, I agree. It's difficult. And maybe it starts from at home, where you have, at the moment, for example, as you said, it's difficult. But I think the first thing that needs to be put in place is, as you said, like Sri Lanka are not playing. Are Sri Lanka having, was it 2 tests against England?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're having 2 tests against England, but then Australia have 5 tests against England. So if you think about it, you're getting exposed to the top teams less than the other top teams. So what's happening at the moment is, prior to what cricket used to be, where everyone used to play everyone, pretty much the same amount of times, now what you've got is really 3 nations, Australia, England, and India, playing each other more times than they'll play any other nation. And so what they're doing is they're trying to improve each other, which is what's happening. And the other nations like Sri Lanka, like Pakistan, like even New Zealand to a degree, New Zealand are doing really well considering they're not having West Indies even. If you want West Indies Test cricket to improve, you've got to be playing them, making sure that they can play against all the top nations the same amount as any other top nation. That's my point, I think. And that is possible, because at the moment, what's happening is it's all very cliquey, and cricket boards have certain agreements with other cricket boards, and they're all pally-pally, but they don't want to do it with anyone else. And that's my issue that I have at the moment with it, because there's no one central governing body. The ICC doesn't have control over scheduling. It's all to do with the cricket boards agreeing with other cricket boards, and the ICC releases it. So I just think if you start from there, then you've got something in place where it's kind of a format each year where okay, this is what's going to be happening, rather than changing every year in terms of we're going to have 4 tests, or the next year we only have 2 tests against them because we don't rate them anymore. And if you do that, then overall cricket will be better. And then going forward from there, as you said, with franchise cricket, I don't know how much time you have in between, but we've got to make time for it. This is what I mean about importance. Sorry?
There's no time for some.
But there's time for T20 games. Of course there will be, to start off with. Yeah.
But the thing is that you've got to, the boards are balanced in between, do we grow T20, do you grow ODI, do you grow tests? Maybe talk to Sri Lanka and Pakistan fans, boards, they're probably more focused on ODI cricket, T20 and ODI cricket at the moment. Like I went to a test match in Sri Lanka and there was no one in the ground.
Yeah, but Venu,
And
I don't agree with that
ODI
though.
test, it was ODI match. Then there's most. I just think there's. I think you made a right point. I think it's right. I think it works. Your thing works with the 8 or 10 test playing nations.
Yeah.
But how do you get globally? How do you get Canada involved? How do you get Nepal involved? How do you
Yeah.
get those other teams involved? So are you saying they've got to play test matches as well with England?
So I'm saying to start off with, you start with T20s, and you can fit that in because that's possible. And then, to be honest with you, my point is that actually when you get people like Canada, Nepal, all these other teams coming in and playing T20 against everyone else, then cricket in those countries, like the interest raises, and other countries like UK, Pakistan, whatever, then you think, oh, I'll hold on, Canada and Nepal, they're not too bad actually. They can actually play a little bit, and you recognise players, etc. Then these franchises, etc., as well, they will be placed under less importance, and I'll tell you why. Because at the moment, cricket fans are looking. What are they looking for? They're looking to see as much cricket as they can, right? That's why franchise cricket is thriving. But the problem, what the ICC have missed is that with the IPL, the BBL, all these other franchises, the reason why they've risen is because there is time in schedules at the moment to do it. But if you want to make sure that what they should have done is before they even started doing they've heard about franchise cricket, they should have said, actually, we're going to have all these T20s against Canada, against Nepal, etc. And we're going to mix them in with the big boys, see how they go. And then actually you have a schedule where people are able to watch cricket and a lot more cricket. That's my point, I think. And then actually people are not turning their attention to franchise cricket. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but as I've said, that's not the pinnacle of the sport. And the issue is that some people are thinking that's the pinnacle of the sport, and it's not. So people literally are worshipping IPL teams or PSL teams or LPL teams, and that's they care more about that than they care about their own country. But you can't win a World Cup in a franchise.
It's funny, like you'll ask Liverpool fans or Chelsea fans in football, like if you ask them, would you rather England win the World Cup or your team win the Premier League or Champions League? They'll probably go for their club, would you say? And I think cricket's going to become like that.
I disagree, actually. As a Chelsea fan, I'd rather England won the World Cup than we won the Champions League. I don't really care that much about that, to be honest with you. I think...
But there'll be some fans that will...
There will be. I agree with you. There are some. But I think the issue with that is, even in football, it's cliquey. But the one thing about football is, Venu, though, is that you do have internationals and people... It doesn't matter whether you're from Liverpool, you're from Manchester, people will sit together, and as soon as the World Cup's on, the whole nation will watch it. And people that don't even care about football will still watch it.
Well,
that's my point. But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So, we need to get cricket in that position. At the moment, there's people that are not watching the Premier League or any type of football, but as soon as the World Cup's on, they'll watch it. Do you think that's the same with cricket? Do you think when the World Cup's on, do you think a whole nation's watching it? Or do you think there's some people that actually they'll watch the IPL, and then if India go out, they won't even bother watching it anymore? Or similar to PSL, they might watch the PSL, but as soon as Pakistan goes out the World Cup, we don't care anymore. That's my point. Whereas as someone who might watch it as a casual watching the World Cup, you keep up to date with it.
Yeah, I get your point. But I think it's going to be difficult considering...
It is difficult, yeah, I agree.
Because cricket has got... Well, football's only one format where it's 90 minutes. Cricket, obviously, has got extra time constraints, 5-day test matches, plus ODI, plus 20, plus all this franchise cricket. I think you made a really good point. I think the cricket board's missed an opportunity to grow the sport globally. Instead, they're focused on growing their franchises. And I think the owner should have been on growing the sport globally and letting the likes of Nepal, Canada, Ireland really develop their cricket skills. So yeah, I think it's a interesting.
Like it was good to see, for example, Ireland have 2 tests against England, right? Like I was happy that they got that, because why not? Why can't they do it? And the only way, the issue is that people just say, oh well, just put them in. But the issue is that because they haven't had exposure to Test cricket, or even lesser teams like the Nepals, etc., in T20s and ODIs against these top teams, they'll never be able to improve to that level. The only way you can do that is by exposing them. That's why I feel quite passionate about it, because I just think as a cricket fan, and I love other sports like football, like boxing, like tennis, but all these sports are global sports. They're not just stuck to 7, 8 countries. And you might have an anomaly where someone from Russia might like cricket, but there's not that many people. It's really, you have cricket fans that are concentrated within the subcontinent, England, Australia, New Zealand, West Indies, the Caribbean, and that's pretty much it, right? Like, where else do you really have cricket? Are you going to go to South America or a whole continent of America who's, like, as you said, Canada might play it, but hardly anyone, a lot of people won't even know Canada even have a cricket team. So that's what I think is just, it's a little bit, for me, it just doesn't sit right with me, and it shows a complete lack of kind of thinking and innovation to think, how can we grow the sport in all countries, rather than just saying, what they're doing at the moment is they're thinking, how can we grow the sport globally, but sticking with these countries we have, rather than saying, how can we grow the sport globally so that everyone in every country wants to play cricket. And that's what they're doing in other sports, but they're not doing it in cricket.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think historically, I think Test match cricket was based on the British Empire, and that's why you've got the Indian subcontinent playing, Australia, New Zealand, the West Indies playing. So I think that's historically, I think that's why it was popular in these countries. But I think Test match cricket is really hard to spread globally. But I think a format like T20 can be easily spread globally. So hopefully that's something they can look at improving, because T20 has really come about the last 10 years. So I think that's a format they can really spread all around the world.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Test match cricket, as you said, is very tough because it's very unique. And I think even some people that will follow cricket, they might not watch full Test days even because they just don't have the attention for it. And let's be honest, people's attention spans nowadays are not as large as they used to be. So people want quick stuff, and that's why T20 has come into its own. But yeah, I agree with you. You have to first grow it in T20s. And then, yeah, if you can even if they can add 2-3 nations to the Test Championship roster, it's a win-win for me. I just think,
I agree,
as long as they can just do that, and maybe, as I said, maybe when I said about annual schedules being uniform, maybe you have a 3-year kind of schedule, because obviously no one can play everyone every single year, but you do it so that you have a 3-year schedule, whatever it is, so that everyone still manages to play everyone within a 3-year period or 2-year period, and actually you're playing everyone the same amount of time. That's the other thing that I think is really important, because the issue is at the moment is that you, as I said, I think even what will happen at the moment is that if it carries on how it is, teams like the West Indies, even Sri Lanka, even Pakistan, even whoever else, Bangladesh, for example, yeah, they've improved, or they were great in the past, but they will fall by the wayside when they're not giving as much exposure as the top teams playing against each other. And I think we've got to be careful about that, because you don't want to be in a situation where you really only have 3 to 5 teams who are actually very competitive, or actually when they play against anyone else outside that top 5 or top 3, they completely outmatch them. You don't want that, do you, in cricket?
No, you don't. I think you made a good point. I think England, Australia, India will always be strong. And I do think like West Indies, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, even New Zealand have had strong periods in their cricketing histories, but they haven't been able to maintain it. So I think, yeah,
but even India, though, to a degree, it's only recently that they became very strong, because back in the day they weren't. It was only really Australia and England that were very strong because of the Ashes, basically, because they had that agreement. But now India, in the last probably, I don't know what, 2020, maybe 20 years, have come more into their own because of it. So I just think that they've definitely now, they're one of them, aren't they?
I still think the Ashes still has to be five Test matches, personally.
But then, no, I understand what you're saying, Venu, because of the tradition, because you're a traditionalist, right? I agree with you. But then that's fine. So if you want to do that, then fine. So for example, Australia and England play 5 tests against each other, but that's every 2 years, right?
Yeah, home and away. Yeah, so every 4 years at home.
Yeah.
So
every 2 years. So in a 2-year space, you play 5 tests between Australia and England. That's what they do, right? Fine. So then you do that. Then, for example, England, if they play Sri Lanka, they might not play a 5 test series, but they'll play 3 tests one year and then 2 tests the next year. That's how you do it, and that's how you make sure that it's fair. I'm not saying that every test series has to be 5 tests. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the cumulative amount of tests that everyone plays against each other should be the same. And if you want to stick it to 5 tests, as you said, because traditionally that's what the Ashes is, then fine. But there's got to be that, because I've looked through schedules for different countries, and I know how much, like even as a Pakistan fan, how much cricket we play against the top nations and how much other nations do, and I can see that it's completely out of whack.
Yeah, it's true. I think there needs to be more uniformity in the schedule, and it has to be fair for everyone. And also, they need to think about growing the sport globally, because it's a sport that deserves to be, every country deserves to play. And I'm sure every country is have their own team, but they need to have a chance to really expand, the great game that cricket is. So yeah, I think that we've come to the conclusion there, haven't we, Fizan?
Yeah, sorry for ranting on a little bit. I'm just, as you can probably tell, I'm very, very passionate about this. This is one thing in cricket, actually, everything, but I just feel very passionately about. And as someone who has coached kids and stuff as well, I just think, and I've coached kids from loads of different backgrounds, not just who are from the UK, who might have come from other countries, etc. And they are countries that, like Portugal, Spain, etc., but they want to learn the game of cricket. And I think the issue is, as you said, like it needs to be growing globally. And I just think if we want to make sure that the sport thrives long term, you just got to do that. And hopefully it does. And fingers crossed, because I think more people are pushing it. Sachin Tendulkar, for example, he said it. He said, I think the World Cup, what did he say? He said the World Cup shouldn't be cut down, because I think we talked about this very briefly. He said it should include the Associate Nations. And that's, even that is a step in the right direction.
But even things like World Cup, why can't it be some like the Football World Cup, where it's a knockout tournament, like 32, 64, or even like 32 teams? Why not?
Well, I think for the T20s, it could be, right? You could do that, because you can play back-to-back days or every other day. Like, for sure, you can do that. So I agree with you. For the T20 tournament, it definitely should be.
I think what the point we made earlier, I think 10 years ago, growing Test cricket, or 20 years ago, 30 years ago, growing Test cricket globally would have been a hard ask. Whereas now, with T20 cricket and popularity that's brought, I think that's a format that you can spread globally. And you know what? It's 3 hours for a game. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, 100% agree.
Cool. So, I think that's everything for that point. I think it's an important discussion to have, to be honest. And I think that's all the points that we made for this week. Now, this is probably the moment that you've all been waiting for, is the Venu's awards for the week. So a lot of crickets occurred this week. Let's start off with who's our star of the week, Fizan. Who do you think deserves that accolade, that award?
Who have you got?
There's a lot. So top of my head, Kane Williamson with his captain's innings, another captain's innings from Ajinkya Rahane of India. Who else?
You could go with someone like Bumrah got 4 Shaheen Afridi got 4
Cummins bowled well.
Cummins bowled well as well, to be fair to him. I think when you think about it in terms of tons, obviously Dean Elgar could have been in the discussion, but that 95, unfortunately, I think means he's not.
It's close to 100. It's still a decent inning. But
as a batsman, it's a very decent innings. I don't know if he's in the running for a star of the week because of that, unfortunately. But
so if you got 5 more runs, he would be. Is that what you're saying? Just probably 5 more runs.
As a batsman, if you ask a batsman, what's the difference between 95 and 100? And I'll say it's that tick in that 100 column.
In terms of what he did for his team, I think he should maybe be in that.
Maybe, maybe. I think, I think potentially, but I think I would tend to go with Williamson. I just thought, the way that he battled through the initial stages, I thought against Pakistan, where he looked a bit uncomfortable, and then in the end, I thought did really well to, get a very good 100 in the end.
Fair enough. I think I've got to go for Ajinkya Rahane.
Okay.
I think he's facing Australia in Australian conditions against one of the best bowling attacks in terms of Cummins, Stark, and Hazelwood. And Lyon is a decent spinner as well. And the fact that he ran out as the captain last Test match, and the fact that he's a standing captain now, and the fact that he got India from quite a precarious position of what was the score? It was they were 64 for 3, I think, and he's also not out at the moment, going to day 3. I'm gonna go for Ajinkya Rahane of India.
Fine. Go for it.
Do we choose one?
What do you mean?
So is it Kane Williamson or Ajinkya Rahane?
No, you've gone Rahane. I'm sorry.
Yes, go for Rahane.
You're the overruling decision, Venu.
Okay, cool. Okay, awesome. Okay, so Ajinkya Rahane. So hopefully, batted really well, and I think definitely put amends to running out his captain last Test match in Kohli. So made up for that. That's for sure. And if India can win that, he'll definitely make up for that, and will be interesting for the rest of the series. Team of the week, Fazan. There's a few here actually.
Yeah, I think it's either India, New Zealand, or
Sri Lanka. You put Sri Lanka for their first innings effort.
Thing is, I would have said Sri Lanka if you'd asked me after day 1, but I think now that South Africa are kind of back in the game, I think it's difficult to say Sri Lanka now, because I feel like India and New Zealand are in stronger positions now after day 2. After day 1, I think Sri Lanka were in the strongest position of all.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, put Sri Lanka out the window.
So, I mean, I'd go. Thing is, India in a very strong position, actually, if I'm honest. But I think, New Zealand are in the strongest, because I don't think Pakistan. I think Pakistan is struggling. So I'd probably go with New Zealand, because I think New Zealand are in the probably. I think about.
They haven't bowled yet. They haven't properly.
Exactly. That's my point. They haven't even bowled yet, and I feel like they're in the strongest position in terms of a team. And they've already got 1 wicket, and we're only a few runs for 1 with a night watchman in, which will be removed quite soon. I'm assuming as well.
But in terms of a team effort, the fact that India bowled Australia out for 195, some excellent bowling performances from Bumrah and Ashwin, and also an excellent reply from the Indian batsmen, especially Rahane and Jadeja. I think the fact that you've seen India bat, and also they've had a good bowling performance as well. I think after 2 days, I would say all round, India have been the better team. But New Zealand, I definitely agree with you, on in a stronger position, considering, they batted really well, especially Kane Williamson. Yeah, I'm not too sure on this one, who to go for, India or New Zealand. It's a difficult one. I think let's go for New Zealand, considering they're in a stronger position. But yeah, let's go for New Zealand.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, the one thing that I'd say as well about New Zealand is that they were in a position where Pakistan looked like they could probably bowl them out for around 360, 370, but because the tail wagged as well, they pushed forward. And I think, to be honest with you, as a fan, I was just thinking we kind of let it slip, but I think maybe it's just a good application as well by New Zealand, especially BJ Watling, who batted really well. And he's not in our discussion for Star of the Week, but I think even though he didn't score 100, that 70 odd was really important. I think at that stage, it was kind of a pivotal moment, and it could have gone either way. But he made sure that they got over 400 and a kind of a very demanding total.
So New Zealand once again for Team of the Week. I'm pretty sure we said them even last week.
Well, it probably shows the strength of their team at the moment, isn't it? They're pretty insane in all 3 formats at the moment.
2021, definitely a team to watch out for. New Zealand, 100%. So we've done Star of the Week, we've done Team of the Week. How about the player who needs to do the homework, and also maybe the team that needs to do the homework? So let's start with the player you think needs to look at their technique, or look at their performance.
Player, there's a few off the top of my head. I think.
I've got one.
Yeah, who have you got?
Smith.
Yeah, Steve Smith is one. I think Mohammad Abbas, even for me, is another one, or someone like Naseem Shah. I don't think they bowled particularly terribly, but I think there's some definite improvements for me from a Pakistan perspective. I mean, I think Sri Lanka batted pretty well, so it's hard to really say anything against them. I think, and bowling-wise, I think they struggled with 4 seamers. I think it's tough to be very harsh on them. to say, you know, they haven't bowled well. Similarly with South Africa as well. The seamers, I think, could have done a bit more. But yeah, I think Steve Smith, we can go with him because I think, considering his performance in the first test as well, there's a little bit of worry around his form because he seemed in good form in the white ball series for the most part, but now coming into the test match, he doesn't seem to be in the best form, and it's probably a little bit worrying.
So in the first test, he got a score 1 in the first innings, and in second innings, he was 1 not out, but that's when they were chasing 93 after bowling India up 36. And this second test match, he got out he didn't score that much. He got out.
Got a duck.
A duck, yeah, off Ashwin.
Got Quacker.
So I think he needs to. I think Australia are banking on him to get a big score in the next innings. And you can't write a player like Steve Smith out. So I think he does need to do his homework and needs to work out how he plays Ashwin in particular.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's the biggest thing.
It's probably
how he combats Ashwin's or even.
If he does his homework and work it out, then Australia will reap the benefits. They have over the last couple of years really banked on Smith getting the majority of runs, and also Labuschagne from last year, and David Warner as well, who's not in the team because of injury.
Yeah, needs to move his feet to the spinner. Even because I'm pretty sure that's something that he used to do quite a lot of, but he seems a bit stuck on the crease. And Ashwin is a very clever bowler with his guile as well, but I think he's got to move those feet and just needs to back himself a little bit more. He just looks very tentative, I think, against the spinner, to be honest.
So that's a player that's Steve Smith who needs to do the homework. How about the team that you think overall needs to do the homework in a particular area?
I'm happy to go with Pakistan, to be honest with you. I think in terms of bowling wise, I think we definitely lost. I think either us or Australia. I'd say in terms of for Pakistan, I think we definitely had a bit of momentum after getting a few wickets. We had a chance to be very aggressive and attack the stumps, set attacking fields. We didn't do that at all, and we then let BJ Watling and the tail kind of get away from us. And I think from a Pakistani perspective, just not quite good enough in terms of how we bowled. Yasir Shah as well, just got a few wickets, but I just think overall the bowling display, apart from Shane Afridi, was a little bit pedestrian. It wasn't terrible, but with a team as good as New Zealand is at the moment, you've really got to be on your game. I don't think we were. Similarly with Australia, they had India for, 64 for 3? And they had a position where they could have really ripped through that lineup because they had new batsmen to look at. And after that Pat Cummins burst, they didn't follow it up well enough, I don't think. And yes, very good batting, as we said, from Rahane and others like Jadeja, etc. But yeah, I just think Australia kind of maybe let them off the hook a little bit and should have, similar to Pakistan, been aggressive and gone for it because they don't have many runs on the board.
Okay, so you've gone for Pakistan.
Yeah, I'm happy with either, but I'll go with Pakistan.
Let's go Pakistan. We'll see how they respond to the bat tomorrow. Could be a good day tomorrow. So that's that. Let's finish off with, actually maybe not finish off with, but let's go with moment of the week. What's your moment of the week, Fazan?
Ooh, it's tough, you know.
I've got one.
Well, 36 all out, but that wasn't this week, was it?
No, we reviewed that last week, didn't we?
Yeah, that was last week. You're right. Moment of the week. Actually, there's quite a few. Ooh.
I've got one or two actually.
I think. Well, Sri Lanka getting their highest ever total against South Africa. I think that's got to be one. That's got to be a moment.
Was it Chanaka hitting Nokia for
6? Yeah, that was quality. Yeah, I thought really, really good.
You can talk about Williamson getting his 100.
Yeah, Pat Cummins' spell as well. Pat Cummins' spell I thought was very good.
I must say Mitchell Stark's first over.
Yeah, that was quality.
That was such a quality over to get in this final ball. He nicked off was it LB? No, he got
Yeah, LBW. Yeah, Agarwal.
quality over. One of the best opening overs I've seen for a long time. And I was just fortunate. I was pleased. I was up at 4 a.m. watching. So what do you think? We've got some good suggestions there.
I'm happy with any of them. I'm happy to go with Sri Lanka's highest ever total, considering in South Africa. The reason why I say it is because I think that was a big moment for them, but also the fact that one, they haven't played cricket since March. I thought was just huge for them to get such a landmark, and two, the fact that Dhananjaya De Silva, who probably looked the best batsman out of all of them, retired on 70. He wasn't able to come back, and they still managed to get 396, which is a very good total, I think, for them in South Africa. And with a team that, as you probably said to me before, is you don't think they're at their, obviously they're not at their peak or strongest as what they have been in the past. I think it was an almighty effort from a inexperienced and also pretty rusty Sri Lanka, considering they haven't played lots and lots of cricket.
Yeah, I agree, Fazan. I think, let's go with Sri Lanka, because watching them bat, I think it did bring up memories of Sri Lanka of old, where Sangakkara Rajawardena, batting really well and getting putting some good innings together. So it's good to watch and quite promising, quite something to look forward to in the future. There's some promising young talent on the show. So let's go for Sri Lanka. Highest ever total in South Africa, so of 396, I believe. Fair play to Sri Lanka there. What are we looking forward to wrap up this discussion?
What am I looking forward to? Just tomorrow's day 3. Tomorrow, that's what I'm going to say. I think day 3 is. I just think it's going to be so pivotal. I really do. In all 3 Test matches, so really looking forward to that. And I'm really looking forward to our 2020 awards as well, which is going to be in the next few days, because I'm really looking forward to discussing with you guys about
what a year 2020 has been.
Yeah, reviewing the year of cricket and giving out our awards, and I'm sure there'll be a few arguments as well about what award should go to who. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and it'd be nice to reflect on a year like no other this year. And also looking forward to day 3 tomorrow. In particular, I'm looking forward to Australia, India tomorrow. That's what I'm looking forward to. So I think that's everything. So thanks for coming on, Fazan, for this weekly cricket catch up. If you do like what you've watched, viewers, please do subscribe to Fazan's QualityShot channel, where you can also see more good things cricket, and also tennis and boxing as well. Fazan does videos on those. And thank you for tuning into Venu's weekly cricket catch up. Hopefully we'll see you all next week. So bye for now.